And we are live. Gentlemen, all of you, Patrick Daugherty, John Daigle, and Hayden Winks. I did not get a chance to do it. If you can send out the link to our Twitch and on Periscope and to all that stuff, that'd be wonderful. If you could do that while we're going on. Hey, everyone. Rotoworld's Josh Norris here with our pregame show for week one. Yes, not in that fancy studio, in Studio C, John Daigle, and 1 Blakely Road in Stamford, Connecticut. No, we're in the fine confines of our homes, but we are still going to help you win this awkward, weird week one. I can't wait for it. I'm so excited. How are we, guys?
Some of us are in our homes. Others are homeless. But nonetheless, we dug the blazer out because it's Sunday morning. We're here for week one, and we are still ready for the show.
Yes, we are. And the main point of the show, I hope you all remember, is to help you win week one. And so we want you to leave your questions, your start sits, your conundrums, all that good stuff. I'm talking to you, Tower of Ill, and Brian Harriet, and LR Prime, all of you that are already watching us right now. We're going to help you set your optimal lineup. And while those questions filter in, I think the best thing for us to do is go through some of these significant injuries because we didn't have preseason practice reports or any news on who could be out, and some of them are a bit surprising in the last few days. Hayden, let me turn to you first. I think a lot of us were excited about Matthew Stafford and this Lions offense, and the main reason for that was his number one wide receiver in Kenny Golladay, but Kenny Golladay is out today. How are you handling that, and what's the trickle down for the team?
Well, first of all, talking about fancy studios, I got some good production back here. Transitioning over to Kenny Golladay, yeah, this is kind of a big news. I think TJ Hawkinson's probably the biggest beneficiary along with Marvin Jones. I think that Marvin Jones, he kind of is a true number 2 receiver. I think you can bump him up for a couple of targets per game. But I'm wondering if we're going to see TJ Hawkinson go into a true wider or an alpha role here, where I have bumped him up all the way inside my top 10 for tight ends this week. I'm excited for this game. Weirdly, we've seen this game weirdly shoot out. I had to drop down Matthew Stafford just a little bit, but I like pieces all together in this game.
How dare you besmirch Marvin Hall? Everyone knows Marvin Hall, who I'm sure you all know is on the Lions, is getting 20 targets today. No, yeah, Hayden is absolutely right. Danny Amendola's outlook doesn't really change. Marvin Jones's doesn't really change either because, he's never been a guy who they're going to shovel targets onto. He's got such a clear and defined role. And, I don't know if John will agree. John will probably agree, but Hawk is the one whose arrow is really pointing upward for today.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say I was high on Hawkinson coming to the year either, but this clearly opens enough targets for Hawkinson to be involved. The only cornerback we were worried about was Darius Slay, who's inactive today. And that's even if you were worried about him in week one.
All right. I also want to talk about, speaking of the Philadelphia Eagles, they are without Lane Johnson. They're without Brandon Brooks. I think I saw beat writer Jeff McLean say that they're without 6 projected starters in this game.
Very normal, in an off season where there was just so many padded practices and stuff, But
what's crazy is one of the players that we expected to miss, in Jalen Reagor, is featured today. He is featured against the Washington football team. So I know a lot of us are on Deshaun Jackson and Jalen Reagor in season long, but Carson Wentz, I'm not sure what his outlook is going to be with, without his true left tackle and Andre Dillard, they're moving Jason Peters over there without Lane Johnson at right tackle against the strength of the Washington team, and that's their pass rush.
Just gonna say, overjoyed is a Miles Sanders in our signature dynasty league. I have a Miles Sanders. My home league, I have Miles Sanders, and was just really, really glad when he was inactive for today. That's just really great that he's the one person who's injured for week one, but. John has been making the case for Deshaun Jackson very eloquently. Seems like a no-brainer today still, even with, the only concern would be, Carson Wentz running for his life. But that doesn't really affect his ability to get some downfield connections with Deshaun Jackson. You guys have any exposure whatsoever to Jalen Reagor today? When I was making DFS lineups, I'm a horrible DFS player, so that's full disclosure.
Wonderful.
I do like you getting involved, though, because you're the common man. So I want to hear actually your take on this.
Well, I was like, man, I don't know. Jalen Reagor and a GPP ? Because everyone is off of him. But he's got that huge, explosive, big play ability. It's someone who could have a big DFS day and only 1 or 2 catches. I didn't do it, but I did consider it.
So I'm still very high on Deshaun Jackson. I am curious to get Josh's take on Rager because I still am not playing him. I would much rather him go off on my bench and just consider that a win because I don't think he's ready for week 1.
Yeah, in the final 2 weeks of where people drafted him, I don't think it's necessary to shove him in your lineups now, right? Deshaun Jackson, I'm still excited for because we talked about Washington. Their pass rush is good, we think, but their secondary, we think, is absolutely atrocious. And at some level, Hayden, defense does matter, but also some level, it's not something that we should be totally nervous about when it comes to Zach Ertz and Deshaun Jackson here with Carson Wentz. I mean, they're going to put up points, we think, on the scoreboard, and those two would be the beneficiaries most of all.
Yeah, this is going to be a defense that we're going to consider a pass funnel for the entire year just because their secondary is so weak and their front seven is so strong. The issue is I had to bring down Deshaun Jackson just a tad just because of the tackle play. Like, you have to have strong tackle play to take downfield shots. And Carson Wentz, I think, is truly going to be running for his life here. I think this game could probably – I thought it was going to go over earlier in the week. Now I'm on the underside of this. I'm kind of nervous about most of these pieces except Boston Scott and, of course, Zach Ertz. Boston Scott, I think, is a target-based RB2, and I think you kind of need to put him in your lineups unless you started off with like running back in your drafts.
Loads of questions about Boston Scott in the chat. So, Pat, where did you move him up last night in your rankings update?
I moved him to RB22, and that's where I've kept him parked, and I feel a little just uncertain about it because basically I didn't want to put him ahead of Mark Ingram's touchdown potential because, it might not be Boston Scott getting the goal line carries. I didn't want to put him ahead of Raheem Mostert, who I just think things set up well for him this week. Didn't want to put him ahead of
spot here for Mostert. Monster spot.
I didn't want to put him ahead of Jonathan Taylor, even though we think it could be a Marlon Mack season. And the one that you and I kind of debated, I didn't put him ahead of Melvin Gordon just because now I think the Broncos are going to have to rely on that running game so much this week. And Melvin Gordon could be a target-based player almost for this week. But RB22 felt low for me for Boston Scott. I just – this kind of when it's a role player being thrust into that, to like the feature role, I just didn't want to force him ahead of like these true like lead backs. But I totally agree he's an RB2. I just have him ranked as a low end RB2.
I'm covering up my face so everyone out there can see our live odds page, which is up on our premium products. If you want to go look at this, I mean, they're constantly updating, especially right now, about less than an hour, 53 minutes until kickoff. That's rotoworld.com/edge. As you can see right now on PointsBet, the Eagles are 6-point favorites here.
Seems
let's
high.
move on. Yeah. I mean, on the podcast.
I don't know if you guys do. You guys do confident? Like, would you pick like in a confidence points pool? Would you feel at all putting any point? Would you pick the Washington football team basically? I'm thinking about after this is over, the stream is over, flipping my pick to the Washington football team and 1 or 2 confidence points.
Hayden, we did talk about it on the Rotoworld Football podcast, which everyone out there should go subscribe to, that this might be one of the upset specials of the week if you're going to pick one, because I think everyone still has Washington's offense in mind from last year where they were among last in the league in plays, and Scott Turner is going to do the exact opposite and be probably top 5 in plays this year.
Yep, you nailed it. There's going to be a totally new look offense. We're going from the like slowest paced, most run-heavy team in the league to an offense that probably is going to be above average in like neutral situation pass rate just with the new offensive coordinator here. So lots of dinks and dunks. Make sure Terry McLaurin's confidently as a wide receiver 2 in your lineups. Antonio Gibson's more of a flex guy for me, kind of wait and see, but his upside is there. So this is like one of the weird teams I'm like most excited to see what happens in week 1, just because we're having a completely new offense here.
All right, well, let's get into some listener questions now, or viewer questions, because we have a boatload of them. Thank you so much, everyone. Keep leaving them, and we're going to jump all over them now. Let's start with this one. Look at this. I mean, we don't have the studio and production NBC, but we got it right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, in my home, along with Michael Murphy helping us out. But Bosny, Antonio Gibson, or David Montgomery. I mean, I think you have to go with Antonio Gibson, even though we've actually seen David Montgomery on the field last year as a rookie. It wasn't good. And I also believe that Antonio Gibson, even if the script is neutral, negative, or positive, he has a role in each of those, John Daigle.
I understand that David Montgomery practiced in full the past 2 days, but you're still flying blind if you play him. So there are going to be a lot of David Montgomery questions. There are a lot of David Montgomery questions. And my response is you just have to ask yourself your own risk tolerance, because I'm not playing him. But if you feel comfortable he's going to get 10 to 15 touches, then by all means. But again, like, I'm not playing him.
What I'll say about David Montgomery is just real quick is like, with Montgomery, we're counting on him being more like the athletic, the sum, what is the phrase? Him basically outperforming his athletic peripherals. We didn't see it as a rookie. Now he's at less than 100% health. If you're looking for anything to hang your hat on, I mean, the Lions front seven isn't exactly star-studded, but I completely agree with John. Like, you're betting on pure volume and not an upside play. Antonio Gibson, far more upside.
The sum is greater than the parts. Is that what you're looking for, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, the sum is greater than the whole. The whole is greter than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, still sounds better when Josh said it.
There we go. That's why I'm the host. All right, let's move on over to Sullivan Sellers. Start Kareem Hunt or Dave Montgomery again. Where are you going with that one, Hayden?
Well, I think all these guys are like RB3 types. I don't want to be starting any of these guys if I can get away from them. Kareem Hunt last year against these Ravens in a blowout, he caught 4 passes only, and that's just because the Ravens play ball control here, and I think that's what's going to happen here again. I would still go Kareem Hunt in the PPR format just because Montgomery could literally give you a 0. I think that Montgomery's probably going to get double-digit touches, and I'm not sure if Kareem Hunt will, but I'll chase the upside in the PPR format for sure.
The fact that Jarvis Landry said himself that he may be limited today coming off offseason hip coming off that offseason hip injury leaves some untapped upside for Kareem Hunt being used in the passing game. We don't know if that will happen, but it's at least possible under a new play caller.
And the Browns are 7.5-point road dogs here, open at 9. So the line has moved 1.5. So, I mean, if you're thinking that, one, we know that Nick Chubb can do it all. But if we saw something in the second half of the season, it is Kareem Hunt in the passing game. I'm eagerly anticipating what this Kevin Stefanski offense, how it fits with all the pieces in Cleveland as well. All right, Pat, we're going to move over to you for this one since you are the rankings maestro. From Zephyr, 7-8, 7-8, 7-8. Wide receiver flex, Marvin Jones, Boston Scott, and Michael Gallup. Standard league thanks. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about Michael Gallup leading up to this week. But this Dallas Cowboys team, obviously facing off against the Rams on Sunday Night Football, are 2-point favorites on the road here, Pat. And they could immediately show that they are a top 1, 2, or 3 passing offense in the NFL. And if so, Michael Gallup, who basically matched Amari Cooper last year, is going to show that in week 1.
So Zephyr, I think this needs to bench one person here. I mean, I think you got to get the RB touches and Bo Scott in there at your flex. And even though we're talking about like the arrow kind of slightly pointing up for Marvin Jones, I still don't view Marvin Jones as like a volume guy. I think it will be more big play based today. So it didn't really change my Marvin Jones outlook that much. So, with Amari Cooper has kind of a checkered history with Jalen Ramsey, Michael Gallup kind of flying under the radar a little bit this week. I think he's a borderline wide receiver 2, and I would still go Michael Gallup over Marvin Jones even without Kenny Galladay.
Any disagreements?
Well, I just think that we're kind of downplaying the target uptick with Marvin Jones. Like, just because he's not a true number 1 for a season, he can be a number 1 to some degree in week 1 in a good matchup. So I would probably go Marvin Jones and Gallup here. I'm a little bit more scared of Boston Scott's full row.
I'm pulling up Marvin Jones's career game logs, by the way. I'm going to look up his career high for targets. Even though it won't prove anything whatsoever, I'm doing that.
Last year, he had wide receiver 2 usage with Stafford, and that was with a full Kenny Galladay here. So,
and he's had 2 career 4 touchdown games. Like, we know his
exactly.
upside.
That's what I'm saying. He's an upside big play for sure, but I think Gallup's floor is just so much higher, and I think Gallup maybe has a similar ceiling today.
Well, let's ask another question about Marvin Jones. Let me turn to you. Julian Edelman or Marvin Jones? Because
it's Marvin Jones for me, and I think both you and Hayden will disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what Cam Newton looks like in this Patriots offense. Yeah. And, I mean, there's so many questions with N'Keal Harry, the tight ends. I think this passing offense is going to be funneled between Julian Edelman and James White, and that's that.
I think the answer is both. I think Edelman's a good player. I think Marvin Jones is a good go wrong with either of these. I think Edelman has a higher floor. I think Marvin Jones has a higher ceiling.
By the way, Hayden, the data, if you can call it that, it's not really data, it's just stats. He's had at least 11 10-target games in his career, Marv. So, you might be right.
Between Marvin and Gallup, like, you're just splitting hairs. They're both top 20 receivers, most likely. Gallup seems like he's sitting on the outside, but we all agree in this matchup in particular, which we are not worried about air concerns. Stop even asking. We don't care. Like, Gallup is still we care, but not for fantasy. Gallup is poised to explode.
Your hearts don't go out to the people of the West Coast.
All right. Well, talk about splitting hairs. This is a tough one, Pat. And again, I'm going to put you in the hot seat. PRP fireman, Tyler Lockett or Terry McLaurin and standard. We talked about Terry McLaurin, how this Washington offense, it's probably, I mean, he's the lone playmaker that is proven on it. But meanwhile, you have Tyler Lockett going against an Atlanta Falcons defense that has been easily targeted the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a hard one for me. I don't know if it'd be a hard one for any of us. I'm going scary Terry, but I mean, this one is a little personal for me. If some of the viewers out there could see some of the Tyler Lockett Slack comments from Rotoworld last year, they might know that the faith from some of the Rotoworld writers is a bit lower than it probably should be in Tyler Lockett. But I think Terry McLaurin's a high-end wide receiver too this week. And I just think volatile Tyler Lockett, I'm going to have a hard time kind of getting him out of the wide receiver 18 to 22 range most weeks, which is where I have him this week. It's a good matchup. It's a good setup. But, I mean, I just love Terry McLaurin, and it'd be hard for me to find anyone to bench Terry McLaurin for, and Tyler Lockett does not meet that threshold.
Any disagreements?
I would start McLaurin.
I'm kind of indifferent. I think Tyler Lockett's about to go off too.
You can't go wrong. I mean, you're not going to lose your matchup because of this question.
I won't leave this up for long. This is our composite rankings, which you can find of Denny Carter and Patrick Daugherty and John Daigle and Hayden Winks up in our season-long tools. Again, rotoworld.com/edge. You can get it for the price of guacamole, $4 a month. Hayden Winks, I mean, you have Tyler Lockett as the wide receiver 11 this week. And obviously you love Terry McLaurin as the wide receiver 13. I mean, if you're going to give advice to PRP Fireman, you want both of them in your lineup. They're top 12 options, basically.
Yeah, certainly. You got to have more league mates here. That's your thing.
Josh, you got to highlight that 9 on Robert Woods too. What he's really telling people is to trade their entire team for Robert Woods.
I love it. I love it so much. All right, that's the only tease you all get. You have to go and purchase the season-long tools to get our composite rankings if you want that. Let's keep it going here. We haven't talked about Cam Akers at all. And speaking of that Rams-Cowboys matchup, Cam Akers against another fellow rookie, Antonio Gibson. And I've seen some Philip Lindsay love this week, John Daigle. Is that just because that one Melvin Gordon maybe has not impressed those watching practice and he's, just hasn't fit in the offense as much? And they also think that Philip Lindsay's going to have a bigger role in the passing game?
I would like to know where you're seeing that love, first of all. But it's probably because Melvin Gordon battled the rib injury. And this seems like a bad matchup for the Titans. But again, a bad matchup for the Broncos is good for Melvin Gordon because we have historically seen that the Broncos have just failed to use Philip Lindsay in the pass catching game. And now they added one of the most impactful receiving backs in the league, let alone free agency. So I still think the game script is high and safe for Melvin Gordon. But it's still Akers for me. It's Gibson over Akers, although I do believe Akers has 18 touches tonight.
I will say with Philip Lindsay, I don't understand. Josh isn't making it up. There was like a late camp Philip Lindsay movement, and not only has he not really been that involved as a pass catcher when he has been, he's been like woefully inefficient. And Melvin Gordon, it might not seem like it, but he is a much better pass catcher than Philip Lindsay. And when it comes to Lindsay versus Gordon, I just can't identify a single area where I think Philip Lindsay would have the advantage on Melvin Gordon. So even if Mel had a quiet camp, the Lindsay movement has just not made any sense to me.
Here's a good one from Matt Zerl. Boston Scott or Tyler Boyd in full point PPR. Hayden, as a Joe Burrow massive fanboy, I think that Tyler Boyd is easily going to lead this team in targets today against the Los Angeles Chargers. And it's also a defense that, their strengths at corner are probably on the outside and on the inside where Tyler Boyd operates most. That's probably where they're going to be most susceptible in the passing game.
Yeah, but it's still not an easy matchup for Tyler Boyd here. I think I have him in wide receiver 3 flex range. I would probably go Boston Scott with a touch floor. And I think that there is some weather concerns in Cincinnati, I believe. I'll have to double check that. But I would go Boston Scott with the touch floor.
It is Boston Scott for me as well. I believe he's a safer play. And if we think negative game script or Philadelphia's O-line, which is a disaster after Lane Johnson got ruled out, cater their game script to that and getting the ball off quicker, that means a ceiling for Boston Scott to reach in targets as well.
I'm going to try this out. Our start sit tool up on our premium products. Look at this.
Try it out.
Look at this. Evaluate.
What does it say?
Projected points, Boston Scott, 13.7 on Yahoo.
Oh, yeah.
And Tyler Boyd, 10.7. So the start sit tool, the algorithm says to go with Boston Scott there, Matt Zerl. All right, let's keep it moving here here's an interesting one. We talked about Michael Gallup a bit earlier. Boom, as I do the production work. Pat, Stephon Diggs or Michael Gallup, where are you going?
Man, this is what I have Steph a little higher in the rankings, but then this is one of those ones where I'm put on the spot. I'm like, am I really playing Steph Diggs over Michael Gallup? But I think I am, just because Steph is one of my favorite players in the NFL. Even though I'm the full-on Josh Allen fader. I mean, the Bills will have something special. I think they're not going to want to have Steph Diggs come out there and have like a 2-catch game. I think they're going to force the issue with Steph Diggs. And, just such a big play threat, such an everything threat. He's a short to intermediate threat just as much as he is a big play threat, downfield threat, that even with my extreme Josh Allen concerns, I look for reasons to start Steph Diggs. And Michael Gallup, I just don't think I like both. I like Gallup's floor more, but Diggs' ceiling a lot more.
I love Gallup in this matchup. And the 30-mile-per-hour winds and rain seals the deal for me to lean Gallup over Diggs.
Is it truly 30-mile-per-hour winds and rain?
It's 32-mile-per-hour gust with sustained 21-mile-per-hour winds.
You only care if it's sustained over 20. So I was like, he's going to say sustained like 16.
But Daigle, what if this happens? What if the gust actually makes Josh Allen more accurate?
Slows his ball down.
And so then it allows Stephon Diggs to catch those. Like instead of, pushing it further away, it pushes it closer to him. It could happen.
I didn't weigh Norris's win model. You're right.
Yes.
You have a point.
I'm branching out this year. We've all done research this offseason.
It's a good question. It's very close. I like both players. I just don't think Gallup can go wrong in this matchup. You're going to get targets. Maybe it doesn't lead to production, but we're looking for opportunity. And I think no matter what, even going back to just last year's rapport, Gallup is a safe play.
All right, let's go to Wooby. Kenny Galladay out. That hurts. He can start 2 of these. So sit 1, Hayden Winks. It's full point PPR. DJ Chark, Boston Scott, or Tyler Lockett.
Man, I love DJ Chark, but I think he would be the guy. I'm really bullish on Tyler Lockett, his matchup. I think that there's a chance that Seattle goes out and throws the ball a little bit here, especially in the dome environment, chasing production from Matt Ryan and the Falcons. So I would definitely have Tyler Lockett. I think Boston Scott's a little safer than DJ Chark, but DJ Chark's going to be like a wide receiver 2 on the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 borderline for most games. And his matchup's totally fine this week too.
Here's my thing on DJ Chark. It's a 7-point spread here with obviously Jacksonville as home dogs. That's not very good. But I think a lot of people, who are considering starting Gardner Minshew in 2 quarterback leagues or DJ Chark or other pieces of this offense, are hoping for garbage time. And Daigle, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in order to get garbage time, your team basically has to absolutely suck for 2.5 or 3 quarters. Like I would much rather want to go with offenses that I think are going to be good. And in this case, that's Tyler Lockett. And we think the Eagles against a bad defense in Washington.
I don't think you can go wrong here, but I am leaning your way. I still like Shark, but Shark is more of a DFS tournament guy. He's not someone you want to lean on his ceiling, in my opinion, in this matchup when you have 2 safe options.
In Jacksonville, it's like 90 degrees, but with thunderstorms. So double check the weather real quick. When I checked last night, it was legit 90 degrees with thunderstorms. So that would not help DJ Chark in the long ball.
All right, Pat, another one to you. Jackson Frazier, Leonard Fournette, or Devin Singletary? I know,
Perfect
look at that cringe.
question.
You just look like you saw your 2-week-old put something in their diaper that they should not have, Pat.
Thanks for giving me this one first. I will say I started out with Fournette like pretty aggressive in my ranks. I'm like, the Bucs cannot be serious about still staying committed to Rojo. But Bruce Arians tripled, quadrupled, 5-tupled down all week on Rojo, enough to the point where I've now got Leonard Fournette ranked as kind of like a barely there RB3, whereas I still have Singletary on like the RB2-3 borderline, because this is one of the week 1 questions I'm just most fascinated about is what is actually going on in the Bills backfield, because the Bills have some very good beat reporters, but I'm still suspicious of all this Zach Moss hype. It's good. He seemed to be living up to his pre-draft billing. He's also a 3rd-round pick, just like Devin Singletary, but I just wouldn't be surprised if this was just a situation that got a little too out of control because of a few beat writer tweets. And I still think Singletary will have enough of a touch advantage to be kind of in the RB 24 to 28 range. Whereas however many double downs Bruce Arians had this week, it did give me enough pause on Leonard Fournette, where I'm treating it as a wait and see week for Lenny.
Yeah, with Leonard Fournette, I want to play him. Like if this was a super positive game script for the Bucs, then I'd feel much more comfortable about it. But I think it's the opposite. Don't you think, Daigle?
You didn't pick up Leonard Fournette for week 1. You picked him up for week 2 through 11 when the Bucs have the 4th easiest schedule based on Vegas season win totals. You run him out in good game scripts, not against the Saints.
You nailed it.
And if you drafted Devin Singletary, this is the week to play him when you're uncertain of Zach Moss's role against the Jets at home. So if you're drafting Devin Singletary, this is the week that you would play him.
All right, Ben Brannon, this is to you, Hayden. Pick 2, okay, full point PPR. David Montgomery, Deshaun Jackson. Let's just eliminate Michael Pittman and Mike Gesicki in there. Henry Ruggs, Cam Akers, Jalen Reagor. My feeling is that you're going to pick Deshaun Jackson and Henry Ruggs.
I think I would go Cam Akers
yeah.
and Deshaun Jackson, with Henry Ruggs being 3rd on that list. Help us out here. Give us 3 names, not 8 names.
Next time, just eliminate the Michael Pittman and Mike Gesicki possibilities in there.
I was say, why are you saying just straight up eliminate Mike Gesicki? I mean, I wouldn't start him, but like to me, he's not like this is a very narrow target tree, very heavily targeted player down the stretch last year. He's playing the big slot role. Like they need him for targets. You don't have to feel good about it, but Mike Gesicki to me is kind of like in the low end tight end 1 conversation.
My concern with that game is just play volume. The Patriots were first in offensive pace last year. I think that number is going to go way down. I think there's going to be a run heavy approach here, and I would question if the Dolphins are just going to run enough plays this week to get cute with Gesicki.
If the question was Gesicki or Evan Ingram, we can talk. But in this case, with the touch floors high on at least 2 of those players, that's the only reason I'm eliminating Gesicki from this conversation.
We haven't said Henry Ruggs' name at all. I think Henry Ruggs could have a monster day against the Carolina Panthers.
What a surprise.
No, I also think that
I
he
agree.
might have 3 catches for 27 yards, and that's a possibility. But I bet John Gruden wants to get cute, wants to have fun with his new playmakers, and Henry Ruggs. I might have even gone back, Pat, and watched some practice videos seen him take a bunch of backfield work and swings and screens, and they're going to try to get the football in his hands. This Panthers secondary is going to be atrocious. It would be a shock, maybe the biggest shock in the league, if the Panthers defense is league average. I mean, it's going to be a bottom 5 unit. And starting this week, I think Henry Ruggs is going to start his season as the target leader for the Las Vegas.
I got to cut you guys off because I'm asking the next question. For my second flex spot in the Rotoworld Deathmatch PPR League, am I starting Darius Slayton or DeAndre Swift? I really want it to be Swift, but man, I do not know. And I don't want to start Darius Slayton.
You can't start Slayton.
I would go with Slayton just because Golden Tate's questionable. That matchup is brutal for Darius Slayton, though.
That question is brutal.
For either player.
I have Slayton in there just because I'm so uncertain about the Swift touch projection, and I think the whole Lions' offensive outlook has been downgraded. But
in deeper leagues, I guess I'd go with Swift's targets, although even those seem unclear right now. That's a rough one.
All right, Skika, PPR, sit one of these, John Daigle, Todd Gurley, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. You're going to go with both the Rams wide receivers. You're going to go with the volume here potentially against a Seahawks defensive line, which has major questions.
I am sitting Kupp in this matchup, oddly enough. I think if you're going to get a good week out of Gurley, it has to be this up-tempo affair with the highest total on the entire slate. Gurley is a good pivot to also play in DFS if you're not stacking the Falcons' passing offense. So I do like Gurley today over Cooper Kupp in this instance.
All right.
I agree.
There we go.
He's healthy.
Moving. He is healthy.
Here's
one for you, Hayden Winks. Quissel. Odell or DJ Chark?
Very tough matchup for Odell against Marcus Peters here, but I'm going to pick him with the better weather. We know that they're going to be trailing. I'm curious to see how healthy OBJ is. He was one of the biggest positive regression candidates across the board just because of injuries and how his chemistry with Baker Mayfield was suspect last year. I think that the coaching staff will help him out this year. So I think Odell is going to be a wide receiver 2 most weeks. And I would include, he's probably a little closer to the wide receiver 3 mix this week just because the matchup, but I would start him still.
The news on Jarvis Landry also makes it easier to swallow that Beckham start because he could have a higher target share because of it.
All right. We will keep it moving. Where should we go? Let's go here to you, Pat. Anthony Miller or Bryan Edwards, full point PPR?
I'm going to disappoint maybe some Rotoworld. I'm just going to say Anthony Miller because these Bears targets have to go somewhere.
I agree.
And the Raiders, situation, we love Bryan Edwards' overall upside, but even in this great spot, we just don't know how he's going to be used. And Anthony Miller is kind of always already stubbornly. We have like 2 years worth of like stubborn usage. The targets have to go somewhere. Anthony Miller.
Brian Edwards should certainly be a great player. I just have my doubts. They will use him properly in week 1. And you're going on a whim if you start him in like a 12-team league over someone we know will get targets for sure. So I'm just out on that.
All right.
Anthony Miller was one of my 10 fantasy usage model values this week. He was the wide receiver 28 in usage from week 9 on last season after Taylor Gabriel was released. So I think that there's legit volume here. I think he's going to be closer to wide receiver 3 flex play for most matchups this year.
Few things before we keep moving. One, if you're not subscribed, go and subscribe to the Rotoworld Football podcast right now. We'll have a Sunday morning recap. It'll be up in time that you crawl out of bed, recapping every single game on today's slate. Also, go over to rotoworld.com/edge. Check out our premium products. If we do not get to your question, which we have about 15 more minutes to go, we have a start-sit tool. We have the composite rankings of 4 different analysts for the site. And so kind of a aggregation of minds there to come up with the best decision just for you. All right, Pat, we have a quarterback question. We don't get enough quarterback questions here. Kaminsky, Matt Ryan or Drew Brees? Where are you going?
I'm going Matt Ryan barely. I think I'm going Matt Ryan. I have him back-to-back in the rankings. Let's make sure that I actually have Matt Ryan higher. I do. And just Matt Ryan, my concern with Matt Ryan is like we always think these old quarterbacks are indestructible until they're not. And after Matt Ryan hurt his ankle last year, I mean, he looked like close to finished. And I'm not saying he was actually finished, but in the second half of the season, Matt Ryan could not move last year. And a lot of that was because of a bad offensive line play, injured offensive line. So the offensive line is healthy again for the Falcons in theory. And we know that a normal Matt Ryan is such a high floor. And even in like a potential shootout with Drew Brees today, I like Matt Ryan's floor a lot more. And Matt Ryan's not like he lacks for ceiling either. But I just hope Matt Ryan can back to like normal moving by Matt Ryan standards this year because he was basically like Stonehenge in the second half of the 2019 season.
Go ahead, Daigle.
No, I was just going to say, you know what you're getting with Matt Ryan, especially in this matchup where Seattle's secondary may have gotten better, but their pass rush has gotten much worse. So now imagine Matt Ryan with time, with only weapons veteran weapons he's shown rapport with. So, yeah, I just love Matt Ryan. I think he's the safest play.
And Daigle, that front line has gotten worse, and they were already 30th in adjusted sack rate last year. This is going to be one of the worst pass rush defenses in the league this year, so that helps Matt Ryan out.
Let's go with one more quarterback question. Carson Wentz or Josh Allen? Hayden?
Earlier in the week, it would have been Carson Wentz for me, but I think I'll still go Carson Wentz if there's weather concerns in Buffalo. I think they're both like on that quarterback 1-2 borderline. I think I would rather chase the Wentz production, especially if Miles Sanders is out there and just be dumping the ball off to Boston Scott. You get those cheap yards as well. So I'll try that out.
Okay. We haven't talked about this name at all. So let's shift on over if I can find it. Here we go, Daigle. Boston Scott. Lots of Boston Scott questions, understandably. Or Marquise Brown. I mean, Marquise Brown is going up against a Cleveland Browns secondary that was just destroyed and depleted this offseason. And I think, Daigle, Marquise Brown has like top 10 wide receiver upside this week, even though he's probably not ranked there.
Yeah, it's Marquise Brown for me. This is one where I weigh the upside over the safety because certainly Boston Scott is much safer. But Marquise Brown against a banged up Brown secondary, missing 2 of their top 3 corners. And I haven't looked yet. I haven't seen the injury report to see if MJ Stewart, their 4th string corner, was cleared, but he would be starting in this situation if he's healthy. So it's just Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson without hesitation.
Yep. Pat, do you disagree?
No, I mean, John's right. This is like classic like safety versus upside, and there's no doubt that Boston Scott has the touch floor and then Marquise Brown doesn't. But you would be sick, if you lost your matchup because you started like 14 decent Boston Scott touches, but you missed like the 2 huge Marquise Brown play. And it's not like he's like totally boom or bust. Marquise Brown also has a floor. So yeah, it's Marquise Brown.
Speaking of the Ravens offense, Hayden, L.A. Smith in his 10-team league, James Conner or Mark Ingram? I mean, Mark Ingram against that Browns defensive line and linebackers, or, I mean, I think this is the week you play James Conner, right? Against that New York Giants team when they're favored by 6 points heading into it.
I think this one's pretty easy. This is James Conner. Good matchup. I question if the Giants are going to be able to do anything on offense. I think that game script's going to be on the Steelers side here. James Conner, you drafted him 2 rounds earlier than you were drafting Mark Ingram, and I think that both matchups are decent here. I'm going James Conner.
Connor is an RB1 this week, and Mark Ingram is not. I think it's pretty much that simple.
All right. We'll keep it moving. Jeff Abood on YouTube. To you, John Daigle. Zach Moss, Leonard Fournette, or James Robinson. He is missing Miles Sanders in this contest, and it's half-point PPR. Where are you going?
To be clear, I am starting James Robinson over David Montgomery in leagues because I have that little faith in David Montgomery's health. But in this case, I am going Zach Moss, hoping for the touchdown upside and hoping in what we believe will be positive game script for the Bills, likely leading by at least one score throughout, that Zach Moss splits touches.
Oh.
I'm going Moss. I just think I feel like the Jags run game just basically might not exist today. I mean, I understand the James Robinson case, but I'll bet on Zach Moss as kind of like unknown upside and what should be a slobber knocker of a game.
Here's a weird one for you, Hayden. I'm going to set you up to fail. Tarik Cohen or Jerry Jeudy in half-point PPR?
Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, I think it's Jerry Jeudy. Cortland Sutton, I don't think he's going to play. If he does play, I'm not sure if he's going to play that many snaps. I think that he's going to be the number one receiver. The matchup is good. Adoree Jackson's not playing for the Titans secondary. David Montgomery is apparently going to have a full workload. I'm not fully buying that, but that does not mean I'm buying Tarik Cohen with Mitchell Trubisky either. So give me Jerry Jeudy. I think he's going to be the number one.
To be clear, Sutton might do 10 jumping jacks by Monday night, so you never know if he's going to be rolled out. But I actually agree. Jeudy now with the higher target share, when in negative game script, I would lock him in over Cohen.
Half PPR helps Jerry Jeudy a little bit, but I mean, like we're looking at like a true James White special from Tarik Cohen, who was truly one of the least efficient running backs of the decade last season. Yep. But the Bears, I haven't seen any signal whatsoever that they're going to change his usage. And he did yoga this offseason, so it's basically case closed.
Did you do yoga this offseason, Pat?
Not that I saw.
He had a kid. Does that count?
Well, that's a different type of yoga.
That's bad.
All right.
Deprivation then.
It's Kama Sutra.
Let's go to Canuck5 on Twitch. Jordan Howard or David Montgomery in half-point PPR. I mean, what a dilemma he has. Pat, I'm going to set you up to fail.
Not really. I mean, I'll go David Montgomery just because I still have more faith. And I guess I have more faith in David Montgomery's touch floor. I don't know. It is kind of setting me up to fail, but half PPR, I mean, we get zero boost for Jordan Howard there. Maybe David Montgomery will catch 3 to 4 passes. You kind of hold your nose there. I mean, because basically you're counting on Jordan Howard needing to finish a drive for the Dolphins. And yeah, I just would rather bet on supposed David Montgomery workload than Jordan Howard finishing a drive with the touchdown.
All right, Hayden, to you. Pick 2 in this full-point PPR from Titan 3-1. Devontae Parker, Terry McLaurin, or Deshaun Jackson.
Terry McLaurin's a lock.
Yep.
And then Deshaun Jackson, Devontae Parker. I think I will go with Deshaun Jackson. Devontae Parker lit up the Patriots last year, but that was pretty fluky. That was like in week 17. I'm not even sure what the heck the Patriots were doing then. I think that Deshaun Jackson is probably a little bit safer, as crazy as that sounds.
Whoops.
It was weird. The Patriots needed that game, actually. I mean, they didn't get home field advantage because of that game. So it is a little strange that Devontae went so nuts against Stephon Gilmore. But yeah.
Well, Pat, in your rankings, you had Devontae Parker as wide receiver 27, Deshaun Jackson as wide receiver 30.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into it, but yeah, I am playing Devontae Parker over Deshaun Jackson just because I'm a little spooked by, the reports that the Dolphins are going to have this big rotation at receiver. But to me, they need Devontae Parker so badly. And not that the Eagles don't need Deshaun Jackson, but Devontae Parker was top 10 in every receiving statistic last year. We're so obsessed with the pre and post Preston Williams splits that we are ignoring a few inconvenient Devontae Parker truths where he was a top 10 receiver by basically any standard metric last year. And it's still the same quarterback. We like the new offensive coordinator. And to me, I mean, I faded Devontae Parker pretty far just based on what he did. I don't even have him ranked as a wide receiver too, but I'm still putting a little respect on Devontae Parker's name.
Hey, Daigle, to you. El Fergo, you have to pick 2 of these. Keenan Allen, Deshaun Jackson, Amari Cooper, Marvin Jones. What a good setup El Fergo has.
Deshaun Jackson, and I have had to weigh this in leagues personally as well. And I will tell you, I am leaning Marvin Jones over Amari Cooper.
Wow.
I like the matchups for both, but Marvin Jones just seems like the much safer play. Being healthy, one, which we can't assume Amari Cooper is after not practicing this week, even though he wasn't listed on the injury reports. And then, of course, for what it's worth, Jalen Ramsey, likely shadowing, given that he is shadowed in past years.
Hayden, to you, West Bucks 87, Standard League. Marlon Mack, Deshaun Jackson, Antonio Gibson, Jalen Reagor. I've received a bunch of Marlon Mack questions this week because of the dynamite matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And even if he sees 10 touches, 12 touches, Jonathan Taylor can also see 10 touches in that time, and they both could hit, 75 yards and a score.
I still think even if Marlon Mack is getting carries, he would not be the goal line back. I mean, we saw Jonathan Taylor had, I think, over 50 rushing touchdowns combined in 3 seasons. He's bigger than Marlon Mack. I think that he would be the goal line guy regardless. In a standard league, I think you got to have Deshaun Jackson, and I think I would go Antonio Gibson over Marlon Mack.
I would too.
All right.
I agree, but Marlon Mack is a good flex play today. I think there's enough meat on the bone for both Mack and Taylor to go over 100 yards with a touchdown today.
All right, here's a flex question for you, Pat. Non-PPR, so this kind of hurts Deontay Johnson, who's the wide receiver. I'm kind of going to eliminate Dave Montgomery for that conversation. Cam Akers or Deontay Johnson for you?
I don't have Montgomery and Akers as far apart as you might assume in the rankings, but I do have Akers at least 4 to 5 spots higher. And it's just weird because you got the Malcolm Brown starting report. You got Darrell Henderson now healthy, supposedly healthy. But Cam Akers, still just the second round investment when they already knew what they had in Malk, what they already knew what they had in Darrell's, still speaks louder than words. And I do think Cam will have a comfortable touch lead, high total game, likely shootout. I like Cam Akers.
Agreed.
All right, here's another good one. To you, Daigle. Travis Nebelsick. Nebelsick. Calvin Ridley or T.Y. Hilton?
It is Calvin Ridley. I do agree T.Y. Hilton has upside today, but all offseason, how much did we talk about Calvin Ridley being a wide receiver 1? And now he's given the most opportune matchup to be a wide receiver 1 in one of the highest totals of the weekend. So it is Calvin Ridley still. I do like both, though. I really do.
Well, that highest total of the weekend, or one of them, let me find it for you. Over on PointsBet's at 49.5 right now. And Falcons are 1-point favorites at home over the Seattle Seahawks. That's something we talked about in the previous show on the Rotoworld Football podcast. Again, all of you should go and check that out. We'll also have a recap show available for you tomorrow morning. We have about 3 minutes. Let's go rapid fire here while we can. Here we go. John Daigle, back to you. Sony Michel, Jerry Jeudy, Leonard Fournette. Sit 1. Who is it?
I am sitting. Oh, brother.
Sorry.
You're just basically asking me to sit Fournette or Michel, who reporters are saying could be eased in, even though game script works out where he could still fall forward for a couple touchdowns with 8 yards total. I guess it would be Jeudy and Michel. Okay. But boy, God, that's close.
Hayden, to you, Daniel Jones or Gardner Minshew?
Wow. I think I'm going to go Gardner Minshew here. I think the rushing production is going to backdoor cover this, and Daniel Jones against the Steelers, especially if he doesn't have Gold Tate, you're going to want to avoid that.
Pat, to you, Josh Allen or Kyler Murray?
Kyler Murray, even, the 49ers defense, a little, not in transition, but not ready, kind of not set up well for week 1, even though it's still a dominant unit.
How scared are you, Daigle, of Amari Cooper? Would you set him in favor of Antonio Gibson?
God, why do y'all do this to me? I know it's my job,
Standard.
but why do y'all do this to me?
Standard.
Standard is Cooper. Standard, I'm leaning Cooper. Gibson, we expect to be used in the passing game. Probably we expected had tea leaves leading to Bryce Love being healthy scratched. That's not concerning whatsoever. Peyton Barber will still get carries. But Cooper at least has the touchdown upside. Gibson's ceiling is probably higher in this game, but I just worry still.
Daigle, we'll close on this one. I'm going to go over to Hayden. Migs SP824. Moonshot question here. When is matchup for him? Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool, or Paris Campbell? Who are you going with?
It's not Chase Claypool. I'm not sure if he's going to get that many snaps. I think I will trot out Paris Campbell over Justin Jefferson. I think we're kind of overreacting to Justin Jefferson being the number 3 receiver. They still run some 3 wide receiver sets, and we'll see how much Olabisi Johnson actually plays over the way more talented Justin Jefferson now. But it's still Paris Campbell for week 1.
All right. That is going to do it for us here on this week 1 preview show. Again, thank you for John Daigle. Thank you to Patrick Daugherty. Thank you to Hayden Winks. Go and check out Pat's rankings if you want to on the front of the site. If you want a little bit more, go over to rotoworld.com/edge. Check out our composite rankings to go to the start sit tool. You have time. You have 15 minutes until kickoff. That is rotoworld.com/edge. You can use promo code FBPOD10 to get $10 off. And it's $4 a month, the price of guacamole. And I want to again remind you, Rotoworld Football Podcast in the morning, we will have a recap of every single game today, every single fantasy relevant player covered. So go and subscribe on all platforms to the Rotoworld Football Podcast. All right. Good luck, Hayden Winks. Good luck, John Daigle. Good luck, Patrick Doherty. I am Josh Norris. Everyone out there, talk to you next week. See ya.
Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.